All right, welcome and thank you for joining in today. While people get set up, please take a minute to familiar yourself with your virtual meeting technology. Please place yourself on mute if you aren't already. If you want to interact with the chat and test that out, please enter your name, what agency or organization you represent, and where you're coming in from. Tyre will be joining in shortly and will be monitoring the Q&A space throughout the presentation. Feel free to unmute yourself or enter any questions into the Q&A anytime throughout the presentation. We're also going to be recording this and posting it onto the IDL Grants webpage. I'll make the slides available for anyone who needs it afterwards. Great. All right, so today I will be walking through 3 out of 4 of our open grant programs. I'm going to start with a general introduction of the process, and then I'll dive into the Western State Fire Managers, the WSFM, Landscape Scale Restoration, the LSR, and our new Private Lands Protection, Resilience, and Restoration Assistance, PRRA grant program. These are all administered by the Forestry Assistance Bureau here at the Idaho Department of Lands. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A box or the comment box, and we'll try to address those issues as soon as possible. Let's get into this. My name is Isabella Pritchard. I'm the grant coordinator here at IDL. I have a background in research and science that began at Montana State University, and it's taken me across the country implementing different conservation and restoration type projects. I've been with IDL for a little bit over 1 year, and I'm currently in the process of getting my master's at U of I with a focus in natural resource and fire management. My position here at IDL is to provide technical assistance with the funding process. So I'm here to help get you ready from applying, figuring out what program fits for you, and then ultimately creating a competitive proposal. Tyre Holfeltz is our wildfire risk mitigation program manager. He's been with IDL for what feels like a lifetime for, I'm sure, more than just him, but more truly, it's been about 12 years. Tyre has a wealth of experience within fire response and management, and he's going to be one of the most valuable resources to help you with your community wildfire preparedness plan, the CWPP. You'll hear this come up a few times throughout the application and throughout the proposal process. And then also he does project planning and will assist with adaptive management throughout the project implementation. Megan is the 3rd person on our team. She's been with IDL for about 1 year, and she's going to be your technical resource for everything post-grant award. So Megan assists with MOU development and reimbursements. I want to bring your attention to a few critical resources that are available on our IDL Grants webpage. If you haven't explored these yet, I encourage you to do so. This is going to be your hub for all resources related to project proposal packets, education resources. This is where the recording from this webinar is going to be hosted afterwards, and also has all of our upcoming events and recent newsletters. Getting into a bit of the project planning related to proposal developments. These are a few of the steps related to getting yourself set up to be able to apply for a grant. The first is to collaborate. Ensure that you're holding a series of planning meetings, invite potential partners that might provide expertise and subject matter. And then also, you want to be able to identify where this project needs to take place, what landowner types will be included, have those conversations about what issues might come up, why this project is important, who's doing what, identifications of gaps in the partnerships, and possible costs associated with the project. This first step is going to be one of the most important as far as identifying who needs to be involved and truly where your gaps are that need to be filled before going into the development process. After that, well, I will say these steps are not always linear. The project planning process can be organic, and so always take this with a grain of salt with whatever your exact situation may be. But the next step that I'll dive into is research. If you're doing a fire mitigation project, you want to make sure to review your local community wildfire protection plan as a part of the planning process. Might it need to be updated to be able to be eligible? That's a big question that you want to figure out early on in the process. Next, quantifiable measurable outcomes. What actions or activities need to address to be able to meet the objectives of your project? You want to really establish what measurable outcomes and milestones you need to be able to prove the potential success. Once you've gotten through these steps in whatever order you may need, you'll be ready to develop a grant proposal. You need to be able to figure out what program might align with your different objectives and specifically your timeline. You want to make sure that this money is coming in at the right time for your project to be implemented, because I know a lot of projects can have seasonal dependencies and also landowner interest, stakeholder interest. You want to make sure that you're hitting the ground at the right time with the right people. Next, getting into SMART objectives. I hope that everyone is familiar with this already, but I will reiterate, these are specific, measurable, achievable, reportable, and time-bound metrics. So whenever you're having your stakeholder conversations, when you're developing your proposal, you want to think about quantifiable language that you can use, because this will be extraordinarily successful to help communicate the amount of forethought that you guys are putting into these projects and presenting a well-planned proposal. Going back to the community wildfire protection plans, these are critical to be able to prove that forethought and planning. Your CWPPs must be current within 10 years, and your projects must be identified within these plans. Neighboring plans are okay as long as they cover the project area and should be explicit as far as where the project is happening and what activities are happening for the project. So I'll give you a couple examples as far as what might be a good project description in a CWPP and what type of project descriptions we're trying to move away from. A good project is something that we'll talk about. We're doing X amount of miles in X specific area using X activity metrics. Whereas we want to avoid just that we're doing work along a highway. Another example, the good one is we're providing wildfire mitigation activity or education in the form of FireWise handouts to the community of New Meadows, Idaho. So the thing I like about this one is not only are we providing education, but it also says what type of education, using what resources, and the specific community name. So this gets a little less vague than just saying we're going to host community meetings in a county. And then finally, just to really drive this point home, our last example is we want to avoid saying we're just doing a chipping program within this county. You can say something like we're supporting community defensible space efforts through the implementation of a community-wide chipping program for the town of Lenoir, Idaho, including the purchase of a county-owned chipper. So it's easy to amend a CWPP to be able to get your project examples up to this level of detail. You really just work with whoever the plan administrator is and send them the project information. If you don't know who these project administrators are, then please reach out to Tyre. He should be able to point you into the right direction. And then they would send the amended version over to Tyre, who would approve it that way. It's quite a simple process. Please don't get hung up on this step. And if you have any questions, feel free to direct those to me or Tyre. A quick overview as far as the grant programs within IDL. These funding sources come from the U.S. Forest Service, the private forestry branch. We're really grateful that they make these opportunities possible and available to the state of Idaho. The WSFM and LSR grants are ranked and scored at a Western state competition level. This includes 17 states that you're competing with. So we have a certain proposal period that allows for post-development before we submit a final competition. The PRRA, the new program, this funding has already been secured by IDL, and proposals are going to be evaluated at the state level by IDL and ILRCC. The timeline is going to be that IDL solicits the proposal from partners, and then we go into the development process afterwards. I'll cover this in a little bit more detail later. But IDL is going to be the final applicant, and then funds get subgranted to our cooperators, which would be you guys. Okay, eligibility and funding considerations. So the eligibility is pretty blanketed. All state, local agencies, tribes, nonprofits, and educational institutions are considered. This is the same across all of our programs. Within the LSR and WSFM opportunities, there's 300,000 that is available. 240 is contracted to the grantee, and then 600,000 is saved for IDL administration. The PRRA grant is, again, unique in the fact that 500,000 is available total per award. These are all on reimbursement base only. So the process goes that you request reimbursements after you spent the funds, and you provide proof of payment to a vendor, contractor, or staff, and then IDL makes sure that those costs are allowable before the funding is reimbursed back to you. Again, these grants are not cash grants, so the funding is not provided upfront. This reimbursement period means that we're allowed to do this extra level of security to make sure that funds are being spent within the bounds of each program. We often see grantees request reimbursements on a quarterly or biannual basis, but we'll work with you to determine what your needs are and really tailor that to your individual project within the MOU process. By the way, MOUs are memorandums of understanding, and those are based after the award to ensure that the project is secured and under the correct bounds. There are 3 different types of project funding. We've got our grant funds, which I just talked about, and then there's also the match funds and leverage funds. So match funds are often required within grant programs, and those just ensure that you have some skin in the game. It comes from other types of grants, cash, or in-kind of work on eligible grant activities. They must be paying for activities that are considered eligible within the grant program. Can't come from a federal source. So, for example, within the Western State Fire Managers, you could do match funding for if a landowner is using the firewood and collecting firewood, or if someone else is doing the slash pickup for a fuel removal project. That type of sweat equity also counts as match funding. Leverage funding, on the other hand, is essentially the value of contributions made by the proposing grantee and their project partners to meet the mutual project outcomes. It's above and beyond match. So in the case of LSR and Western State Fire Managers, it's desired that leverage be a one-to-one value, but it's not a requirement. You'll find that 300 or 240,000 is pretty easy to get to one-to-one with the amount of different stakeholders that are contributing to these projects. There's not a match requirement for the PRRA and also our hazardous fuel reduction program. However, leverage is highly, highly encouraged. And just to recap, match versus leverage. Match needs to fall within the grant authorities while leverage does not. Match cannot be federal resources, but leverage can. Going into our process, our stages, and our timeline. So we begin with the proposal. After you've done all of your planning and put a proposal together, every year we offer our request for proposal period. We open up that time. And then after that, we'll develop a full application together for our Western State competitions applications. And then IDL submits these projects to that competition. You submit these by just emailing me your proposal, and always just reach out if you need any assistance with this. far as the timeline goes, we opened the proposal period on January 13th this year. The following timelines are going to be approximate based on shifting priorities and timelines with the Forest Service. But as you know, today is our webinar for these grant programs. Project proposals are due to me by March 7th. Please keep me updated if you have any issues meeting this timeline. This spring, ILRCC is going to review these proposals and rank them based on priority, and then we'll select which ones are going to go forward into the Western competition or to be funded with PRRA or HFR. In the fall, we'll develop our full grant applications for the Western competition, and then those will be submitted in the winter. Next year, in the summer, states are going to be notified for those WSFM and LSR programs as far as which ones have been awarded. And in the fall, we'll be able to start working with those awarded applicants to be able to develop MOUs and hopefully begin implementation within the winter of 26 to 27. So the key thing that I want you to recognize is that even though you're putting in a proposal now, that funding won't come through until next winter. So maintaining engagement with your stakeholders is pretty critical throughout this process. And also, you don't need to have every single detail figured out within your project. We just need to have enough to make it a viable project if it does get awarded. Going into the Idaho Forest Action Plan, this is another document similar to your CWPP that you should be familiar with. It was updated in 2020, and we're currently going through our 5-year update. This plan is developed by a cross-section of stakeholders throughout the state and presents a modeling effort identifying threats and benefits to Idaho forests. We've established different strategies to be able to address mitigating threats and enhancing and increasing the benefits. And it's broken into 2 parts. You'll notice if you go and find it on our website. Part 1 shows the modeling and mapping exercises and can help you figure out where your area lines up within the threats and benefits. And then part 2 will show the narrative behind the priorities and strategies. All grants must tie into part 2. That's the part where you're going to be looking to pull language for your application. And again, this is on our website. If you hover over the forestry section, you'll be able to click into the Idaho Forest Action Plan. Another tool that you'll find on our website is the Priority Landscape Area Finder. This is another requirement for a few of our grant programs. So you'll want to go and find exactly what priority landscape area you're within, and then you'll need to list that within your application. This is an interactive GIS tool that can be found on our website. And the programs that it's not a requirement for, these can also be used to identify priority project areas within the ILRCC review. If we get too many applications where we can't fund, and we have some applications that are within a priority landscape area, those will be prioritized over projects that are not. I do feel the need to mention the federal executive order. So this was put into order on January 20th, 2021. This is related to benefiting historically underserved communities through economic, ecological, and social impacts. I have a link to this order, but really it's something to be aware of because it impacts the LSR program and can also impact our behind-the-scenes prioritization of projects. So within LSR, all applications must incorporate equity into their projects to be able to align with this federal shift towards benefiting historically underserved communities. And other programs, it's good to prioritize this to be able to align with that federal priority. All right. Does anyone have any questions before I start getting into our grant programs? Okay. I'm going to get started with landscape scale restoration. So the purpose statement pulled from the national guidance reads, to encourage collaborative science-based restoration of priority forests. That is the incentive of this program. IDL can submit a total of 5 applications, and then tribal entities can also submit 2 directly into the competition, which means a total of 7 applications can be submitted within Idaho. Realistically, based on the per state funding cap, only 2 applications will really be awarded, making this a smaller scale funding program. We don't have any role within the tribal applications, but we're always happy to provide technical assistance for that. LSR projects will address the national themes to protect, enhance, and conserve the landscape objectives, which are available within the notice of funding document on our website. Again, all of these projects must align with the Forest Action Plan goals and objectives. A key part of these projects is that they should include a transfer of knowledge component. So this is related to sharing of the knowledge and allowing the community to learn from the implementation process. This enhances the sustainability of the on-the-ground work that's occurring throughout this. The LSR priorities are to look for innovative projects that integrate various programs. We're looking for IDL and other partner programs that are providing a cross-boundary collaboration within these projects. So this looks like a proximity to other landowners, the inclusion of a combination of land ownerships. So that could include tribal, state, local government, private lands, not limited to, but could include multiple private landowners or a combination of those. Projects need to coordinate with or have a proximity to other complementary restoration projects. Even if you're not in the same region as them, having similar goals, similar outcomes, complementary outreach, something that's able to enhance the benefit of this project on a landscape scale. A couple of the state programs that you could complement are Good Neighbor Authority or Shared Stewardship Program. There's also the NRCS EQIP program that's implemented across Idaho. And so if you have any issues trying to figure out the connection of your project to your landscape, please reach out to me and I'm happy to help with that research. But all in all, you must leverage funding and support from multiple entities to be able to make this a scaled project. Some of the types of projects include development of watersheds, action plans, demonstration projects, community outreach projects surrounding hazard-based planning, river and creek restoration projects. Also got fish and riparian ecosystems, community tree planting, forest economic geospatial database development, survey prioritization and treatment to control invasive plants. Another set of examples of these projects include some more historical fire-related projects related to FireWise and fire resilient state parks, post-fire restoration, forest enhancement, including prevention and preparedness projects. And the key point here is that there's on-the-ground impacts and integrated efforts to improve management of non-industrial private forest lands that align with the FAP. Now, again, you can't be strictly education and outreach. You must have some sort of on-the-ground component and vice versa. There needs to be some sort of education component if you have an on-the-ground project. If you're still confused about what type of projects might apply for the LSR program, there is a resource within the request for proposals packet on our website. These are the national guidelines. It's a table that's included in that document, and your LSR project must accomplish at least one of these items. Here's another side of it. So including water quality, and honestly, the text is far too small on this page for me to read it. And so I encourage you to go to our website and find that request for proposal packet if you're interested in this program. The restrictions is that the grant dollars can't be used in communities with populations less than 50,000. This work cannot be done on federal land. It can't be done for research. And construction activities are ineligible, and that includes anything related to moving dirt or bringing infrastructure in, and activities in the water. So you need to be working above the high water line. The proposal packet can be found online. And so this includes 4 different parts that you need to sign. The acknowledgement form is more of just a guidance document. It needs to be reviewed. And then we also get into the budget development guidelines. The proposed national LSR manual is also just for review. Make sure that you're aligned with it. And then you get into the proposal form. And these packets can be found at our website as well. That's all I got for the LSR program. Does anyone have any questions or interested in learning more about this program at a later point? Okay. Second program that I'm going to go into is the Western State Fire Managers. So eligible entities and efforts include modifying fire behavior, protecting life, and protecting property. Those are the guidance for this program. IDL can submit 10 applications each year into the Western guidance. We typically receive more than that from our pre-proposal period, and we'll sift through those for prioritization with the ILRCC. There's 3 different project types: fuels projects, outreach and prevention, which includes education, and CWPP planning, assessment, and monitoring. Eligible applicants are also the same as LSR. We've got our state, county, and local governments, and it needs to be aligned within your CWPP. A Western State Fire Managers project, if we go into the fuels reduction side of it, which is where 85% of the total funds go, these are explicitly mentioned in your CWPP and can include anything from fuel breaks, forest thinning, defensible space, and watershed protection. 15% of the project will go to CWPP or outreach and prevention projects. These outreach and prevention projects can include school education events, signage, fairs, HOA meetings, social media campaigns, and need to be associated with quantifiable widgets, getting back into your SMART goals. You need to be able to talk about how many events you're going to hold, how many fairs, or how many meetings you're going to attend. Those are all necessary information for your application and also throughout the rest of the project process. You can have a dual type project. So you can have a project that is doing fuels reduction and also doing outreach and prevention. These are typically harder to write and score more competitively than just single type projects, but it's on the table. And if you're interested, please feel free to come to me and we can talk about that. The CWPP projects, again, this is planning, assessment, and monitoring. A lot of other states use this to be able to develop CWPPs or update them. I will say, please talk to Tyre before thinking about submitting this type of project. He might be able to provide the support you need instead of having to go through a grant process for that. Funding restrictions. So the ineligible activities under this grant include doing solely individual homeowner defensible space, maintenance on previously funded federal projects, preparedness and suppression capacity building, so any type of purchase of fire department equipment, small business startup, and GIS database development. Research projects are also ineligible under this project. The proposal packets, similar to Western State Fire Managers, they include your acknowledgement form, your budget guidelines, and your proposal form. The proposal form is where the real meat of your project information goes and where you will spend most of your time developing. Any questions on Western State Fire Managers? Thank you, Tyre. Just reiterating that point that research is not an applicable eligible activity under this, making monitoring really tough to be able to sell on a proposal. I honestly have not seen one go through, and I don't know how that would make it past the competition process. Monitoring is an ongoing predicament as far as how can we verify the ongoing success of a project. Your guess is as good as mine, and we'll kind of continue to work on that issue together. All right, my final program that I want to talk to you about is the new Private Forestry Protection Resilience and Restoration Assistance Program, PRRA. I've had a couple people ask me how to pronounce this. If you want to call it the PRRA, you're welcome to. It is going to be hopefully only 1 year as far as the applications that we'll be accepting for this. We have already received a total of $4.9 million to be able to implement this program and are hoping to get that all allocated out during this cycle. Projects up to 500,000 are eligible, so we're hoping to fund about 10 projects. Qualifying projects are going to be on private land. There's no match required. I'll kind of go into why on the next slide. Leverage is encouraged. And because we already have received the confirmation of this funding from the Forest Service, the funding will be available by the end of this year, hopefully. So it's a little bit faster than going through the Western competition. Applicants are also county, local, state government agency, and accredited nonprofits. The one that I forgot to put on here is also universities are eligible, but might not have as much experience directly working with landowners, which is a requirement for this program. You must have proof if you're doing a fuels project that that project is predetermined within your CWPP. If your project is more restoration or post-fire, that might not be the same requirement, but we're still looking for that alignment with the FAP goals. The key component is within all of these programs is that you have the capacity to manage a project of this size. And then the reason that there is no match requirement in this is because we've received a match waiver from the U.S. Forest Service, because we've guaranteed that the project areas will fall within at least 60% low income thresholds. Within the state of Idaho, this means that the low end of the U.S. Census estimate must be less than about 60,000. So we will verify this. We're going to try to verify all of this through the U.S. Census data. Do understand that there's a gap within that data for communities less than 5,000 don't show up on the census tract. If that's the case, we're going to look into more local sources of verification, and we'll work with you to be able to confirm this designation. And again, it's only 60% of your project area that needs to fall within low income. 40% or less can work within unqualified areas. What is a PRRA or a PRRA project? So one aspect of this is fuels reduction. So defensible space around homes and structures, shaded fuel breaks, fuels reduction beyond the defensible space in adjacent to WUI areas, removal of slash, burning, mulching, prescribed fire, and thinning. A lot of things that our wildfire mitigation programs have already been doing. Also, the other aspect of it is post-fire restoration and forest health enhancement. This aligns a lot with the LSR program, and in fact, the PRRA project is built off of the LSR authorities. So this includes planting native species to increase diversity and structural complexity, strategic establishment of fire-resistant vegetation, also seedling growing, propagation, and stocking or restoration and landscape activities. The funding restrictions are similar to Western State Fire Managers, but also include education and outreach activities are not applicable under this program. This program was built primarily to serve direct landowners with implementation and on-the-ground work. So therefore, maintenance of previous federal funded fuels projects are not applicable. Preparedness and suppression capacity building is a no-go, and GIS development, nope. Also, research is continuously not eligible for these grants. The proposal packets, again, you'll find them on our website. Please take a look. It's got all the information you need, as well as a table of applicable project types. If you have a project that doesn't fit directly into any of those categories, but does align with the EQIP program activities, feel free to let us know. We have a little bit of leeway to be able to do activities that still align with that restoration resilience theme of this program. Anyone have any questions about the PRRA program? And feel free to use the chat or unmute yourself. From Benoit, would we need to have a specific location for restoration to request funding for tree planting or tree growing? The answer is yes, because this funding is coming out so fast, there needs to be a thorough planning component for these programs to be awarded funding. And also because we need to meet that 60% underserved, we need to be able to verify your locations. From Nick, can we discuss the requirements of the forest management plans? Do county tax plans qualify? Nick, can you clarify what you mean by within the application, the forest management plans? Yes, so if you dive into the proposal, you'll see that an aspect of it is that each landowner has a forest management plan, an FMP. I do not believe that county tax plans qualify. These are plans that can be developed by the landowner, by a contractor. Our private forestry specialists here at IDL can assist you with getting information on how to develop a forest management plan. And the key point to this is that they don't need to be completed at the time of a landowner signing up. They do need to be completed by the completion of the project. So if you get an interested landowner who wants to participate, developing a forest management plan might be part of their activities to be able to complete the project. Tyre, do you have something to add there?
What we are going to allow on a case-by-case basis, so you'll need to contact IDL, is if you've already developed or in the process of developing your wildfire risk mitigation initiatives or activities. So the plan that directs the activities for the management of a particular parcel that you want to work on, that will likely qualify as well, but we will need to discuss that with you prior to giving authorization that that is going to be approved prior to your implementation.
And if needed, a portion of the grant funds can be used to support the development of the forest management plans. You just need to distinctly state that in your budget when you're developing your proposal. All right. Are there any general questions about any of the information that we covered today?
Bella, while people are thinking of their next question, a comment for our audience here is I want you all to keep in mind that these applications are intended to support projects. These are not program support oriented endeavors. So as you think about the application that you're putting together, the admin that you will need needs to be specific to that specific project, not to the overall delivery of your programs. So generally what that looks like is approximately 20% of a pass-through award generally goes towards admin. We are able to negotiate that up a little bit if it becomes absolutely necessary, especially if you got education widgets. But just keep in mind that the admin dollars associated with these awards are for the explicit completion of the specific projects.
Thank you, Tyre. And I will say that within the grant world, people are leaning more towards funding independent projects versus programs. That's a theme that you'll see come up time and time again. And the reason for this is to be able to ensure that programs will be ongoing using that match and leverage component when grant funding ties up. Just because grant funding can be volatile, it can come and go, but the entities that are awarding this funding want to know that your program will stick around no matter what, and that the outcomes will be sustainable. The impacts will be sustainable throughout. And again, just to reiterate, proposals are due on March 7th for these programs by 5 p.m. Pacific time. Feel free to email those to me when you're ready. If you want to look over any examples of previously funded projects, all of the Western State Fire Managers and LSR grants are on forestrygrants.org, and you can sift through previous examples. And feel free to contact me if you want me to look over any drafts or if you want to discuss which program might be a best fit for you. Tyre, do you have any additional closing remarks?
We really look forward to seeing your pre-proposals as you develop them out. As you work on those, please don't get hung up on what you feel might be nuances of the details that are required in the boxes. Reach out to us. The reality is that the LSR applications take a lot of energy and effort. So you're going to spend more time on those if you're a cooperator looking at that versus the Western State Fire Managers, the hazard fuel reduction, or the PRRA, the PRA programs. For pre-proposals, 10 to 15 hours for those would be a lot of hours. So don't kill yourselves. Reach out to us and seek some guidance and assistance or as a sounding board if you get stuck. Don't get stuck.
Absolutely. The grant writing portion is my absolute bread and butter, and I love to do it, and I'd love to help you with that process. So please don't sweat over it. We are technical resources, and we're here to be able to serve you specifically. So I hope that this helped, and I hope that you now know a couple of ideas as far as where you might reach out for funding, or if you need to do some more planning, maybe talking to your stakeholders. But either way, I'll let you get on with your Thursday, and I hope that everyone has a great rest of their day.